Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show, final hour of today's program. Joining us on the phones this morning, we talked to him earlier in the week. We're bringing him back because the news just keeps on popping down in Austin. It's Scott Braddock, editor of Quorum Report. Scott, it's never a dull moment down in Austin, Texas.
I'm going to out one of our private conversations because, you know, there has been so much.
Oh, boy, hang on.
There has been, but don't sweat too much, but there has been all this chatter about what's gone on in a private conversation with the Speaker and Chairman Burrows and MQ Sullivan. But in one of our first conversations, you're like, Scott, you know, I mean, if you come on the show, are you going to have anything to talk about, like, after the legislative session's over? Yeah. And I said, what did I say?
Yeah.
I said, don't you worry.
So you did this. You started all of this.
It's quite a conspiracy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's. I had Matt Makoviak on earlier, Scott,
yeah.
And he basically confirmed everything that was on the audio. Basically confirmed everything that Michael Quinn Sullivan had said. He still believes that the tape or the audio tape, whatever, needs to be released. Yeah. He doesn't believe it's as and I think this is true for a lot of us who have paid attention to politics longer than 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing on the audio is probably going to shock us at all. Things that are, mean things that are said about lawmakers. And that was one of, Matt's points is that I don't think any of this is shocking. I don't think any of this is, gonna hurt the Republican Party or anything like that. It seems to me that this obviously this is moving down the road now. I don't know if the audio is ever going to be released, at least not by Michael Quinn Sullivan.
Maybe not voluntarily.
Yeah, not voluntarily, right?
Mm-hmm. So we have a hearing coming up on Monday of the General Investigating Committee. This is all happening very fast, and so much of this is developing minute to minute. There's a lawsuit filed this morning. There's an investigation that's starting on Monday. Let's start with the hearing. So the General Investigating Committee does have broad powers. They can subpoena both testimony and documents, and a document would include an electronic recording of this meeting. And the chairman of the committee, Morgan Meyer from Dallas, has said that he wants to provide full transparency about this. One of the things that we reported at quorumreport.com last night is, and I was reminded about this section of Texas law, a lot of the old-time Texas Capitol observers were kind of scratching their head, Chad, when you had one Democrat ask for a hearing, and immediately the chairman says there's going to be one. And people were saying, well, why are they moving so quickly on that? They could take months to start a hearing if they wanted to, or not have a hearing. I mean, that's up to them. But a rushed hearing does create the opportunity for immunization from criminal prosecution for Speaker Bonnen and for Chairman Burrows. And this is an interesting part of the law. If they were to go testify in front of this investigating committee on Monday, they would be immune from criminal prosecution if it was shown that they engaged in a quid pro quo, which we've talked about here, if it was true that they had offered media credentials and anything else of value to MQ Sullivan in exchange for the way he would spend his political action committee dollars. That would be bribery, and that would be a felony, a little bit of a conspiracy there. Where the government code says that if you testify in one of these committees, an investigating committee, you're immune. Now, why is that? There's a good reason for the law, Chad. So if for example, the committee was looking into some corruption of the state agency, for example, like HHSC, and they were looking into whether or not somebody was embezzling tax dollars or something like that, they would like to be able to call the underlings at the agency to come before the committee and testify and be able to promise those people that they would not be prosecuted for anything that they were talking about. And so there is a good reason to have the law, but the speculation in Austin is that the Speaker is orchestrating this hearing on Monday to be able to quickly go talk to the committee and then be immune from any criminal prosecution. And I had a question about this from another reporter who was working on working on a follow-up story to what we had posted. And they said, doesn't that just mean that they can't be held criminally liable for anything that they say to the committee? And no, that's not what the law says. The law says, quote, if a person testifies or produces a document while claiming that the testimony or document may incriminate him, The person may not be indicted or prosecuted for any transaction, matter, or thing about which the person truthfully testified or produced evidence, unquote. In other words, whatever they are testifying about, that means that they are immune from criminal prosecution.
Does that mean immune from criminal prosecution everywhere?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Anything state level. None of this sounds like anything that would be a federal crime. So yes, in this case, it would be from prosecution anywhere.
Well, and the reason the reason I ask that is, with the, when I had Makoviak on earlier, I guess, I don't know, everyone's looking at who's going to have jurisdiction over what if there is an investigation. Yep. Does someone have to go to the Lubbock DA and say, we want you to look into this, or is this all going to be handled down in Travis County? How is all this handled?
There was a law. Yeah, no, it's a weird deal, and I think there might be some squabbling over jurisdictions if it comes to any sort of a prosecution. If somebody wanted to file a criminal complaint against Chairman Burrows and lived in Lubbock, I guess they could do that with the Lubbock County DA. This is a alleged crime that happened in Travis County. And as I said, there was a law that was passed to sort of change the way all this is handled a couple of sessions ago. It used to be that the Travis County District Attorney's Office pretty much had jurisdiction over what happened with state lawmakers almost in a blanket sort of way, with a public integrity unit that was housed in the DA's office in Austin. But what would happen here is I believe the Travis County DA could look into this as they would look into any other crime that happened in the Austin area. One thing that they could not change in altering the statute is the constitutional jurisdiction of the district attorney. So let's say if you rob a store at gunpoint, in Lubbock, you're not going to be tried for that somewhere else, right? You're not going to be prosecuted somewhere else. And so this meeting happened in Austin, in Travis County, so that's where the jurisdiction would be. There's also a question about whether the Texas Rangers would be involved, because when the law was changed on this, Texas Rangers were put in charge of some of the investigating of state lawmakers. And somebody joked that it's one thing when the sort of keystone cops from the Travis County DA's office show up to ask questions. It's a very different thing when the guys in the white shirts and the silver stars with the gun on their hip from the Rangers office show up. They are sort of they're kind of like the FBI of Texas, the elite investigating force here.
Yeah. Okay, so if let's just say both Burrows and Bonnen were to testify, and they were truthful during that, then they would be immune from any kind of prosecution if there was that type of investigation brought up, right?
That's correct. And so, folks are trying to game out what would happen here. And look, we're providing accurate information at Quorum Report and how this is going to play out. Who knows? Some of the folks were asking me, does that mean that what the hearing is going to be on Monday is sort of a kangaroo court? I think that what we've laid out here with this information is your way to know if it's a kangaroo court. The committee could also simply move forward with subpoenaing that recording. If they do that, then I think you'll know that they're really working to get to the bottom of what happened. But if on Monday you simply see the Speaker and Chairman Burrows go talk to the committee, that'll be something else.
Okay, is that going to be public?
That's a question. They can do executive session in the General Investigating Committee, and we will see whether whoever testifies in front of them talks to them behind closed doors or out in the public. And I will be there at the meeting to report back on what happens. If
it's done behind closed doors, do they still get immunity?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, do we know if any crime has even been committed? Is there still a question to that?
We don't. There is a question, but what we know is that M.Q. Sullivan is alleging that a crime was that a crime had happened based on what he had said. I'm not sure that he's phrased it exactly that way, but he did call it an unethical proposal to have this quid pro quo where he would get media credentials in exchange for the PAC dollars being spent against these incumbents. The way he has phrased it all and laid it all out would add up to a felony bribery charge.
Against who, though? And one of the things that I asked Makoviak was who made the offer of of media credentials. And he said it was the speaker.
Yeah,
the
what'd he say?
speaker was the only one who brought up media
Mhm.
credentials that Burrows never did.
Yeah, interesting. And this is one reason that it's critical to have that tape made public. I mean, you have someone like Makoviak talking about it. I don't have any reason to think that he would say anything that's not true, but it's for the public to really understand what happened here. And it sounds like Matt agrees that look, it should simply be made public.
Yeah.
And then prosecutors and attorneys could go through what's there and figure it all out. The other thing that I mentioned is this lawsuit that's been filed on this morning, and who knows exactly where this will go. But the Texas Democratic Party and one of the Democratic lawmakers who was said to have been mentioned on the recording have filed a lawsuit in Travis County, which does a couple of things. One, they're aiming to figure out whether or not the Speaker and Sullivan and Burrows formed an unregistered political action committee during their meeting. Under campaign finance law in Texas, you can't have a political action committee, which is 3 or more people, talking about how to spend dollars on campaigns. You can't do that without registering. So we'll see where that goes. But simply filing the lawsuit means that Sullivan cannot alter or destroy the recording, which may be the actual key part of them filing that suit.
I want to read to you. I don't know if you've seen this or not. He just posted this. Michael Quinn Sullivan says this regarding the lawsuit, okay? This is his actual tweet. Let me see. This is from Michael Quinn Sullivan. Let me see if I follow. Speaker at Dennis Bonnen tried to make me a victim of an unethical quid pro quo scheme. I blew the whistle on it. Now the Texas Democrats are trying to victimize me with a frivolous lawsuit. And then he said, look forward to kicking donkey butt in court.
Sounds like MQ Sullivan. No matter what happens in this situation, it seems to once again be a full employment act for his attorneys.
I'm wondering how he's a victim here. If they're trying to, it's obvious he doesn't want to play the full audio, right?
Right. Why wouldn't he just do that? At some point, it becomes ridiculous that he's not playing the audio for everyone. How long can they go, Chad? And I don't know what you're hearing from the radio audience there. I know that folks that I'm talking to in Austin and Houston and Dallas and elsewhere say that the tape ought to just come out. And you do have a lot of the people who have listened to it who have said the audio just ought to come out. And it seems from my sources who have listened to this, and it sounds like Matt said something similar this morning, that it's not going to hurt the Republican Party to have this audio come out, which has been the reason that Sullivan says that he's not releasing it, that there's information on there that's damaging potentially to the Republican Party, but it sounds like a lot of Republicans are not even buying that.
Yeah. Okay, so what is, as of right now, what's been the reaction from members after the Speaker apologized?
A lot of the conversations that I've had with members and lobbyists in Austin after the apology, and it was sort of the email equivalent of getting down on your knees and begging for forgiveness. He was saying he was so sorry and that he had made a huge mistake, and he hoped to rebuild trust. That was a direct quote. He had said that rebuilding trust is key. When it comes to presiding over the Texas House. I'm paraphrasing that, but the direct quote was, I hope to rebuild your trust. If you have to rebuild trust, that means you lost it. And that's borne out in the conversations that I've had with members and with lobby. Whenever I have a conversation with a lobbyist about this over the last 2 days, it always starts with the person I'm talking to first asking, so who's the next speaker going to be? Once you lose trust like that, it's really hard to preside over the Texas House.
Scott, before I let you go, I had a texter who asked earlier, one idea that I guess has been thrown out there is, if the Speaker resigns, then Joe Moody would become Speaker of the Texas House because he was appointed by Speaker Bonnen as Speaker pro tem. What happens during the interim? And why would it be a big deal if Joe Moody became Speaker of the Texas House during the interim?
Yeah, it's not necessarily true that he would become the Speaker, and here's how. The Speaker can change the Speaker pro tem at any time they would like to. All they have to do is send a note over to the House Clerk's office and say that they want it to be someone else, and it would instantly be a different person. So if the Speaker wanted to leave someone else in charge as he was on his way out, if he was going to resign, he could just do that before he resigned. As of right now, it would be Moody. And then what would happen next is not exactly clear. It doesn't appear from House rules that they can, and I've been researching this because people are asking that question, it doesn't appear that they can call themselves into a session to select a new Speaker. And potentially going forward, if Moody is let's just say he's the presiding officer going into the next legislative session, one thing that's important to remember is that when the House initially gavels in on the first day of session, there is no Speaker, and one of the first things they do is select a Speaker. So even when Strauss was Speaker for 10 years, at the beginning of the session, officially he would not be the Speaker. Then they would reelect him. Until the scandal broke, it was thought that if Republicans held the majority in the next election, then in 2021 you'd have the same thing where Bonnen's not technically Speaker at the beginning of the session, but then he gets reelected. But now you could potentially have a wide open Speaker's race if the Democrats were to take the majority and Moody is in that chair with the gavel. They might give him serious consideration to keep the job. Incumbency is a good thing in politics.
Yeah. Okay. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think unless something else comes out at this point, or unless more House members start coming out against Dennis Bonnen, Scott, it doesn't seem like to me he's just going to go anywhere.
It could be. I mean, the Speaker can hunker down. He can hold on as long as nothing else comes out. Then maybe he simply remains. We don't know. And I think this hearing on Monday may tell us a lot about, as I mentioned, if it looks like a quick play to try to immunize him and Burrows from criminal prosecution, then that may tell us about where all this is headed. But if not, this may be a slow burn, and we'll see what plays out over the next few months.
All right, very good. Scott Braddock, editor, Quorum Report. Tell folks what they can find at quorumreport.com.
We've got a complete accounting of all of this, all of the different angles covered there for you, plus what's happening in your state government in a broader sense at quorumreport.com, and you can sign up for our free email alerts as this story continues to twist and turn. We're letting people know in real time what's going on. Sign up for those free email alerts at quorumreport.com.
All right. Scott, as always, appreciate your time, and we'll visit next week.
Appreciate you, Chad. Talk soon.
Thanks, Scott. That's Scott Braddock, editor, Quorum Report.